Baker Mayfield isn't holding back anymore. After failing to reach a new contract with the Buccaneers, he's calling out the people running the franchise, revealing why he believes they failed him. Now the NFL is reacting. Let me break it down. Training camp opened for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this week, and it opened with two of the franchise's most important players walking around without new deals. On defense, nose tackle Vita Vea had already requested a trade. On offense, quarterback Baker Mayfield was still waiting for a contract extension, but it was Mayfield's Thursday comments that turned a quiet contract dispute into the loudest story in football. Mayfield spoke with reporters at Buccaneers training camp after contract talks with the front office stalled earlier in the week, and repeatedly expressed his disappointment to be playing on an expiring contract heading into the year. This wasn't a passing comment. This was a quarterback who'd set a deadline, watched it pass, and decided he wasn't going to pretend everything was fine. Speaking to reporters, Mayfield said he wasn't given a contract offer that matches what he's brought to the Buccaneers, calling it disappointing to feel disrespected and explaining that he feels undervalued by the franchise. He didn't dance around it either. "I think I'm a franchise quarterback," he said. "I've been told I'm a franchise quarterback, so to not have a deal done is very disappointing." Here's the part that made this different from your typical contract gripe. Mayfield wasn't just frustrated about money. He was pointing directly at what the front office itself had told him. He made clear that not reaching a deal was disappointing to feel undervalued when you think you earned it, and he believes he's a franchise quarterback and has heard as much directly from the front office and team. In other words, he wasn't inventing a grievance. He was holding the Buccaneers to their own words. The reaction across the league was immediate. Fans and analysts didn't wait long to pile on. One account questioned the timing outright, tying it to the front office's larger pattern of stalling on stars, while others turned the target squarely toward general manager Jason Licht. Ian Rappaport called it not a great sign for a Baker Mayfield extension, while one account countered that a fiery Mayfield with a contract chip on his shoulder isn't necessarily a bad thing. ESPN's Jeremy Fowler framed the moment as a crossroads for the whole organization, noting that it was a fascinating time for Tampa Bay, which has a penchant for paying its stars, but now had a Vita Vea trade request, and a starting quarterback eyeing free agency due to lack of contract movement. And plenty of the loudest voices online turned it into a referendum on the general manager himself, with headlines capturing fans demanding Licht answer for it directly. Robert Griffin III weighed in too, adding his own read on what the standoff meant for a quarterback who has already rebuilt his career once before. Griffin weighed in on the contract situation regarding Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, joining a growing chorus of former players who saw this less as a simple business dispute and more as a message. Meanwhile, inside the building, Vita Vea's camp wasn't staying quiet either. Ndamukong Suh, a former Buccaneer with deep ties to Vea, weighed in on the front office's balancing act, pointing out that Tampa Bay was trying to juggle multiple big money decisions at once, and Mayfield's situation sat right at the center of it. So how did we get here? How does a quarterback who led his team to 4 straight division titles end up standing in front of cameras saying he feels disrespected by the same organization that handed him a 9-figure deal 2 years earlier? To understand that, you have to go back to where Mayfield's story with this front office actually started, because the tension didn't appear out of nowhere. It built year after year, decision after decision, right up until the moment he decided enough was enough. To understand why Mayfield's words landed the way they did, you need to understand what he was before Tampa Bay and what the front office risked when they brought him in. Mayfield entered the league as the #1 overall pick out of Oklahoma, but by 2022, he'd been traded, benched, and passed around the league like damaged goods. After the Cleveland Browns initially drafted him, Mayfield played for 3 different franchises in his first 5 NFL seasons. He landed in Carolina, got cut, and by the time Tampa Bay came calling, most of the football world had written him off entirely. Jason Licht didn't share that red. When the Buccaneers signed Mayfield off the scrap heap, the move was widely mocked. While many scoffed at Tampa Bay's signing of Baker Mayfield, Licht said he expected good things from the former top NFL draft pick. It was a low-cost flyer on a quarterback nobody else wanted, replacing a legend who just walked away for good. Then Mayfield went out and proved every doubter wrong. He provided the Bucs with an immediate, low-cost replacement, produced a career year in 2023 that kept Tampa Bay atop the NFC South hierarchy for a 3rd straight season, and followed that up with an even better showing in 2024, resetting career-high marks while leading the Buccaneers to a 4th consecutive division title. A team that many assumed would collapse after Brady's exit instead kept winning. That performance earned him a real payday. Tampa Bay signed their 2023 starter to a 3-year deal worth up to $115 million, with $50 million guaranteed. The negotiations came down to the wire, with Mayfield reportedly reaching out directly to Licht to push the number higher before it got done. When the deal finally came through, Licht texted Mayfield something that stuck with him, a blunt, almost brotherly message calling him a motherfucker and congratulating him, a small moment that captured how personal this relationship had become between quarterback and general manager. At the time, Licht made his intentions about the long-term plan sound crystal clear. He talked about loving what Mayfield had done for the franchise and wanting him around for the long haul, framing an eventual extension as inevitable once the timing was right. That kind of language, the promise of a future deal, the public praise, the personal texts, is exactly why Mayfield's frustration this summer landed as more than just a contract gripe. He wasn't a disgruntled rookie asking for more than he'd earned. He was a guy who'd been told, repeatedly, by the very people now stalling, that he was the guy. And it wasn't just talk from Licht. On the field, Mayfield built real equity with his locker room. An anonymous NFL coordinator described him to ESPN's Jeremy Fowler in glowing terms, calling Mayfield a winner who can make every throw, who is fearless, and noting that teammates seem to love playing for him. That's the reputation he walked into this offseason with. Not a guy nursing hurt feelings for the cameras, a guy with 3 years of receipts. But 2025 complicated the picture. In 2025, cracks began to show. After a white-hot start that garnered some early NFL MVP chatter, Mayfield suffered multiple injuries, attempted to play through them, and saw his performance suffer. The hot start faded, the numbers dropped, and for the first time in his Tampa tenure, the team missed the postseason. The Buccaneers had a rough 2025 season that saw them miss the playoffs altogether for the first time in several years. That's the backdrop the front office pointed to whenever anyone asked why an extension hadn't gotten done. It's also exactly the backdrop that made Mayfield's public frustration this summer so pointed, because he wasn't asking to be paid off potential anymore. He was asking to be paid for 3 years of results, with one rough stretch used against him as leverage. Every good standoff needs a number, and this one has several, and they explain exactly why the two sides couldn't find common ground. Start with what Mayfield wanted. Mayfield said he was looking to make $50 million per year, and the Bucs' offer was pretty far from that figure. $50 million a year would put him in rarefied territory. The market currently has 11 different quarterbacks making at least $50 million a year, and Mayfield feels like he's outplayed some of those players. Now look at what Tampa Bay reportedly put on the table. Based on Mayfield's comments, the Bucs wanted to offer him nearly the same contract as Daniel Jones. And though Mayfield is coming off a down year, his track record in Tampa Bay is far better than Jones in Indianapolis. That comparison alone tells you why the room went quiet on his end. He wasn't being offered a discount off the top of the market. He was being offered a deal built around a backup-turned-starter with a fraction of his resume. Mayfield didn't hide his math on this either. He laid out the gap in his own words, walking reporters through exactly how far apart the sides were and why that number felt like an insult given what he'd already delivered on the field. He wasn't asking the Bucs to overpay him blind. He was asking them to pay him in line with what 11 other starting quarterbacks were already making, guys he felt he'd outplayed in multiple seasons. Then there's the front office's counter-argument, and it's not just about Mayfield. Tampa Bay also had a Vita Vea contract extension it was working on, plus the possibility of re-signing edge rusher Yaya Diaby, right guard Cody Mauch, and kicker Chase McLaughlin, most of whom are younger than Vea, and in Mayfield's case, who takes on even more importance given the position he plays. If the Buccaneers were to extend Vea, it could eliminate their chances of bringing back some of these other players. This wasn't a front office simply refusing to pay one guy. It was a front office trying to build a budget around a roster with several expensive decisions stacking up at once, and the math wasn't adding up cleanly for any of them. That's part of why the situation with Vea exploded the same week as Mayfield's comments. The Buccaneers suddenly found themselves surrounded by turmoil to start training camp. Veteran defensive tackle Vita Vea requested a trade and staged a hold-in, while quarterback Baker Mayfield shut down contract negotiations after the Buccaneers failed to give him a new deal. Two disgruntled stars, one training camp, one general manager trying to hold it together, and Licht wasn't dodging the pressure. He went on record insisting the front office still wanted to get something done with Mayfield, even as the two sides remained miles apart on price. His public stance was one of optimism, that a deal could still happen, that the door wasn't closed. But optimism doesn't pay contracts, and by the time camp opened, the gap between what Mayfield wanted and what the front office would offer hadn't moved. There's also a wrinkle nobody was talking about at first. What happens if this drags into next year? Jeremy Fowler reported that Mayfield would be willing to play under the franchise tag in 2027, at a one-year tender of roughly $48 million. Though the question is whether the Bucs would even use it. That number matters, because using the tag would come with a brutal cost of its own. The Bucs could use the franchise tag on Mayfield in 2027, but doing so would set up a cap hit of about $80 million for him that year. According to Fox Sports' Greg Auman, $80 million tied up in one player's cap number is the kind of thing that cripples a roster elsewhere. It's a threat, but barely a usable one, and Mayfield knew it. So Mayfield wasn't bluffing when he said he wasn't scared of playing this out. He'd already run the numbers on his side, and they worked in his favor either way. Either the Bucs pay him close to market value now, or they let him play out the season and risk losing him for nothing but an expensive tag next year. Either way, Mayfield's leverage only grows the longer he plays well. And that's exactly what made his public comments feel less like venting and more like a calculated move. A message to the men above him that the cost of waiting only goes up from here. By the time Mayfield actually stood in front of the podium Thursday, the frustration wasn't abstract anymore. He named it out loud and aimed it squarely at the organization. "I'm at the point in my career. I know what I've brought to this franchise," Mayfield said, adding that negotiations left him feeling disrespected and undervalued. Those aren't throwaway words for a professional athlete talking about his employer. Disrespected and undervalued are the two words players use when they believe. The people writing the checks don't actually see what they've put on tape. He kept going, and it got sharper. "I think I'm a franchise quarterback. I've been told I'm a franchise quarterback. It's been said from ownership on down," he added. That last part is the detail that turns this from a gripe into a confrontation. He wasn't accusing a nameless front office of stringing him along. He was saying the words came from the top, from ownership itself, and then the money never followed. He didn't stop there either. "It's disappointing when you think you're a cornerstone of the franchise to be treated like that," he said, laying the frustration bare in front of every reporter in the room. And then came the line that turned this into a warning shot. "If you've waited this long to take care of your franchise quarterback," Mayfield said, "that's too bad, because it's only going to get worse from here." Read that again. That's not a guy quietly accepting a business decision. That's a guy telling his own front office they made a mistake and promising to make them pay for it on the field. He also revealed just how far apart the two sides actually were in the room. Mayfield confirmed the Bucs put forward a 2-year offer, a structure that would have kept him on a short leash rather than locking in the long-term security he wanted. For a player who'd already bet on himself once before, turning a 1-year prove-it deal into a $115 million contract. A short 2-year offer read less like a vote of confidence and more like the front office hedging. There was context to why he waited until this exact moment to say it too. Mayfield had drawn his own line in the sand months earlier. The two-time Pro Bowl quarterback stressed during off-season workouts that he wasn't open to having contract discussions once training camp began. He gave the front office a runway, made his intentions clear, and when the runway ran out, he did exactly what he said he would. Mayfield had set a deadline for the start of training camp to get a deal done. And once camp started, he said, it became all ball for him, cutting off negotiations. That combination, the deadline he set, the deadline the front office missed, and the blunt words that followed, is what turned a routine contract dispute into a genuine confrontation. He wasn't ambushing them. He told them what would happen. They let it happen anyway, and then he said so publicly on the record, with ownership named directly. Behind the scenes, sources close to the building suggested the hesitation wasn't really coming from the football side of the operation. This isn't strictly a Buccaneers front office issue. The Glazers definitely have a major say in a deal of this magnitude, and they're likely the root cause of the stalemate, not Jason Licht. That detail matters, because it reframes who Mayfield's words were actually aimed at. When he said ownership on down, he wasn't just taking a shot at Licht. He was pointing above him at the family that actually controls the checkbook. And there was real debate happening at the top about whether to even make this investment. There was a growing sense inside the building that the franchise wasn't fully aligned on whether Mayfield was the right long-term investment at the most important position in football, at least not at the current price point being discussed, which folks believe is upwards of $50 million per year. That breakdown in contract negotiations was not overly shocking, since a source close to the team earlier in the offseason indicated there was some debate inside the building about it. In other words, this wasn't miscommunication or bad timing. Someone at the top genuinely wasn't sure Mayfield was worth the number he wanted, and Mayfield's press conference was his answer to that doubt, delivered in public, on camera, with no ambiguity left. So where does this actually leave things between Mayfield and the organization that built its recent identity around him? On the surface, nothing has technically changed. He's still the starting quarterback. He's still practicing, still preparing for the season opener. The former #1 pick has been remarkably candid about his frustration, but he isn't holding out or even holding in. Mayfield is practicing in full and preparing to play out the season under his current deal. There's no walkout, no missed snaps, no drama on the practice field. The confrontation lives entirely in his words, not his actions. But those words have already reshaped how this season gets watched. Tampa Bay's overall play fell off last season, and the team ended up watching from the sidelines as the Carolina Panthers won the NFC South, with the Buccaneers set to kick off their new season on September 13 against the Cincinnati Bengals. Every throw Mayfield makes this year now gets measured against the number he said he deserves, and the number the front office wouldn't offer him. There's also a version of this where the front office wins the waiting game. If Mayfield struggles again, or the injuries pile up the way they did down the stretch last year, the leverage shifts right back to Licht and ownership, and the $50 million ask quietly disappears. That's the risk Mayfield is running by betting on himself out loud, instead of just signing whatever was on the table. But there's also a very real version where this plays out exactly the way Mayfield warned it would. If he has the kind of year that reminds everyone why he's a two-time Pro Bowler, with 4 division titles on his resume, the price tag doesn't go down. It goes up fast, and the front office is negotiating from an even weaker position than they are right now. That's not a hypothetical he made up in a press conference. It's the same math that's already played out with him once before, when a cheap, low-cost flyer turned into a $115 million cornerstone in the span of one season. For now, both sides are living with the consequences of the same decision. Mayfield chose to say what he actually thought on the record, with ownership named directly, instead of smiling through it, and the front office chose to let training camp start without a deal, knowing exactly what that would cost them if he plays well. Whatever comes next, a franchise tag fight in 2027, a blockbuster extension if he rebounds, or a trip to free agency nobody in Tampa wants to think about. It started with a quarterback standing at a podium, telling the people who run his team exactly how it feels to be told you're the guy and then be treated like you're not.